I'm Chuck Arnold. I'm a senior circuit judge for the 4th Judicial Circuit of Florida. Back in 1968, I was part of the original general counsel's office for the city, and after that I was with a number of law firms over the years and handled a number of cases, and then in the early 90s I was the general counsel for the city of Jacksonville and became a circuit judge in the mid-90s and been doing that ever since.
And you were involved in what we might describe as a kind of last-ditch, 11th hour attack on consolidation, a lawsuit.
Correct. What had happened is after the August of '67 election and the consolidated government passed, the then county commissioners, which were also known as the county budget commissioners, and other citizens, through an attorney by the name of Ray Green, who was rather famous for opposing consolidation, filed a lawsuit attacking the constitutionality, basically, of the enabling legislation that set up consolidation. It was tried in early '68, and Circuit Judge Tom Larkin authored an opinion upholding all the provisions of the charter. And then later, the Florida Supreme Court, it actually was in July of 1969 before the Florida Supreme Court ruled that the charter was in fact a valid document and held constitutional muster. But it was quite a cause célèbre.
And by the time the Supreme Court ruled, the government was already installed and in operation.
Yes, we were fully functioning, and of course everything was a legal question back then. I remember Judge Durden, who was our boss, Bill Durden, he would take me along with him most everywhere he went, and we were great friends. But I remember sitting in Mayor Tanzler's office one day in early, probably in November, December of '68, and the folks from Nashville came down. They were studying doing consolidation, and one of them asked Hans if what form of government did we have? Was it a strong mayor government or council government? And he said, well, it's a strong general counsel form of government is what it is, because everything was a legal question. Nobody had a clue how to run their departments or the constitutional officers. There were several lawsuits involving everybody's powers and duties. Judge Durden, he issued these general counsel opinions, and weekly there'd be 3 or 4 hot off the press telling everybody how to run the government.
And he was indeed a key figure in that the early days of consolidation.
Oh, absolutely. He had earlier, a few years earlier, there had been the big lawsuit over the tax assessments, and Durden was the judge who ruled property had to be assessed at its fair market value. Before that, it wasn't, and he was, of course, criticized by every property owner, but every lawyer knew he was right. And from that, he fell in, I guess you'd say, with the white hats in favor of consolidation, and they made him the first general counsel, and he literally ran that government the first couple of years till he left and Jim Reineman took over.
And some people may not realize that for a few months there we had 2 governments working, the old outgoing government and the new incoming government.
That's right, and in fact we didn't even have an office. I mean, when we were defending the original lawsuit at the trial level and handling a number of other matters, the general counsel's office was in the hallway of the juvenile court building, which of course has been torn down. And we didn't show up in City Hall till October 1, '68, and then the city attorney's office merged into ours. And Bill Madison was the city attorney who stayed on and turned out to be a very valuable helper to Judge Durden in running the government.
And I guess that was kind of unavoidable, that the new government would take a while to get up and running. So you would need to have the old government continuing for a while there.
It was more, they cleaned house pretty well. We kept there was part of the charter that nobody but the lawyers knew about that made us retain certain people in the government. And of course they were retained. But other than that, as fast as they could, the council and the mayor, they brought in a lot of new people. We just had a blue ribbon council. I mean, it's just wonderful people.
The first council.
The first council, I mean, we had, I remember Sally Mathis and Earl Johnson and Wallace Covington, Ted Grissett, Homer Humphreys, and everybody was there to do the right thing. And
it's interesting, a lot of those people were new to politics.
Yes.
They had never been involved in government before.
That's right. That's right. It was kind of, it was like the first Congress of the United States. They were just a bunch of people running their lives, and then they came in and tried to make their city better. And it was such a pleasure to represent them.
Well, if that early lawsuit, as you say, instigated by the Black Hats, had turned out differently, we wouldn't be here today about to mark the 50th anniversary of Consolidation.
That's true. Had they won that lawsuit, it had been kicked out. The former governments, the county commission, the old city of Jacksonville, and all their elected officials would have continued on, and no telling where we'd be today.
So you were a believer in the concept of consolidation early on.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was, 24 years old, I guess. I was the lawyer to defend it, and I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to which team was right and which team was wrong. I was just doing my job as a lawyer. But I suppose I was for it, thinking back on it, because it made a lot of sense. What I liked about it was you didn't duplicate services. You didn't have a county road patrol or sheriff and a city police department. You didn't have a county fire department and a city fire department. You put it all together, so you only needed one administrative level to run the people instead of two. So logically, that should save money.
Well, why do you think more cities haven't taken up the idea?
Well, never really given it a lot of thought, but I think there's entrenched areas. For example, let's take Jacksonville today. I know a lot of folks that would rather still have had the county government and just the core city as the city of Jacksonville. It'd be cheaper for the folks living out in the county. And I imagine that's the same way around the country as the population went to the suburbs out of the core cities, you couldn't get the votes to consolidate because the people outside of the core city would see that their taxes are going to go up if they had consolidation.
Well, one of the factors that historians point to is that Jacksonville had a lot of corruption, scandal going on in local government, which may have compelled people to give it a shot, try this new thing that was being proposed.
Well,
without that, it might not have happened.
That's true. That was a big part of it, and I was very close to all of that because my mother's brother, Eddie Booth, was a county solicitor who was the chief prosecutor and brought those cases, and my father's brother, Walter Arnold, was the biggest defense attorney in town, and he represented all of them. So I followed all those cases very closely, and later became law partners with both Eddie Booth and Walter Arnold. So we talk about that for years, but that was a real key in getting it passed, was the corruption and the unaccreditation of the school system. Those two factors were the biggest two.
Which technically was not part of the consolidation situation, but a whole other thing that people were alarmed about.
True, but the promise was made that the school board would come in and be part of the consolidated government, although they kept a great deal of independence. In fact, there was a lawsuit about that too. And it was argued in front of Judge Gerald Choflat in December of '68, whether or not the charter provisions that affected the school board were constitutional, because general laws throughout the state should apply rather than our specific provision applicable only to Duval County. So that was another issue we had to defend.
So you had an opportunity to be part of the consolidated government twice, early on.
Yes.
And then later,
Right.
you came back
was kind of one of those MacArthur things. I'm going to return.
And so, those experiences as being part of the government and subsequently, what do you think? Is it a good form of government? Does it need some tweaking?
Well, you know, we recently had a charter revision group I was part of that considered, and we made some recommendations. And the main thing is the council's a bit unwieldy. I mean, it's so big, and it could be a little bit smaller, I think, and still function. Other than that, I don't really think there needs to be any kind of major change. I know mayors have talked about abolishing the sheriff's office and bringing it in under the mayor as the chief of police, but people like their independent sheriff. Yes, he has to go plead his budget case, and most mayors are very supportive, but those are kind of changes that have been discussed over the years, but I don't think it'd be a good idea to do that.
And the question of whether you're going to appoint or elect those constitutional
Right.
offices was a key part of the consolidation debate.
Well, in fact, it was left that they would be elected so that people wouldn't think they were losing their right to vote for certain people, and it would help it pass. Just like the Beaches and Baldwin, originally they were going to be abolished, and they got to thinking after they passed the original charter provision, the White Hats got worried that the Beaches and Baldwin would vote against it. So they amended the original charter bill to keep the Beaches and Baldwin as what they called urban service districts. And that was a big part of the lawsuit. Don't you have municipalities within municipalities, which you can't do by case law.
And you think that's worked out fairly well?
It's been a huge problem over the years, and it never has been solved. There's been interlocal agreements. There's been several lawsuits between the Beaches and the city and Baldwin. I was involved in one of them myself. And no, I don't think that's worked out very well. There's just too much bickering back and forth on whose job is what. I think it'd have been far better to abolish them, to be frank with you. But then again, consolidation may not have passed had that been done.
And that's in the area of speculation, so let me ask you to speculate also on what this place would be like in 2018 if consolidation had been rejected.
Well, I think that downtown, although we've always had problems trying to redevelop downtown, it doesn't seem to get very far. It would have gone downhill further because it wouldn't have had a tax base to fund anything down there. I doubt you'd have had a fancy new football stadium down there.
Or a team.
Or a team, without the revenue from the ad valorem taxes from the rest of the county. So it probably wouldn't be much of a downtown without consolidation.
So any other thoughts that you would like to add?
Well, I'd just like to reiterate, 2 days after I was sworn in as a lawyer, here I'm standing in front of Judge Choflat arguing the constitutionality of the laws that set up the school board with everybody in town, the news media and all watching. And Judge Durden gave me the privilege of doing that. And that was a lot of fun. It was great for a young lawyer and kind of set me on my way to knowing the judges in town and arguing a lot of cases after that.
And speaking of lawsuits, I suppose one of the things that people speculate about is that having a general counsel's office and kind of central services, we haven't had as many intergovernmental lawsuits as we would have had.
That was the reason. Everybody had their lawyer. The tax collector had their lawyer. The supervisor of elections. The legal community was doing right well. And so the idea was to bring everything in-house and make the general counsel, whatever his opinion was, it was binding on the government. It's been challenged from time to time, and in fact, there's some new constitutional amendments that are coming up that may create some problems in that area as well. But it worked out good. The only thing that concerns me some is the office has just grown exponentially. I don't know why they need all those lawyers down there, but I'm sure my successor general counsel is acting in good faith and hired him. But to me, the office got too big. But the idea was to save money and save lawsuits, and it did that.
But we are, generally speaking, litigious society these days. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess that's why the office grew so big.
Well, Chuck Arnold, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Harry. It's great to see you again, and thank you for all you've done for Jacksonville. I've followed your career, and I've really, really enjoyed everything that you've done for us as well.